should be good to go whenever.
Yeah. All right, y'all. So thank you for coming out today on this cold lunch. We are just here to talk about, COVID-19 vaccination. So this is just like a more kind of thing. You know me at this point. I'm Adriana. I'm the health promotion coordinator at the Gwinnett-Newton and Rockdale County Health Departments. And I'm here today with MaryBeth Hornbeck, the Family and Consumer Science Agent for the University of Rockdale County. And so she's going to introduce herself in a little bit, but we are going to get started, dive right into it to respect your time. All right. So I love this cute little comic. It's, got some little green germs and they've got a wanted poster and it's okay, don't panic, but I think a vaccine has been here. All these white blood cells are kind of looking at them, eyeing them a little bit. So today we're going to start off by talking about why vaccines are so important. We like this, right? We like the wanted poster. We want, the robbers and all the things to try to figure it out. So we're looking at what our body does and what that means for us going forward. So with that, we are going to kind of move forward into why they're important. But when we're kind of here, just off the top of our head, in the chat, if you feel anything, if you're like, well, why are vaccines important? If you have certain questions, or you have different ideas when we ask questions, please feel free to just throw them in the chat and we can talk about them later. All right, so let's go forward. So the big thing about vaccination is that it does help us protect us from diseases, right? So we're going to talk about the body and the immune system a little bit today and the immune response that vaccines create in your body against the virus that you're being vaccinated for. And that helps prevent illness in so many times. And then sometimes it doesn't. Not everything is perfect, but it does help us from getting severely ill, even if we do get the virus that we are being vaccinated against. Today, we're going to talk a little bit about COVID-19, so it'll make some more sense. But so that's the big thing when it comes to being vaccinated is that it offers a lot of protection against things. And it's also a safer way to build that protection. So obviously, we could go into all kinds of depth about why, we don't want to get the disease, right? We don't want to get sick ourselves. We don't want to have any sort of, first off, we don't want to miss work. But second, we don't want any of those, more severe side effects, right? If it comes to something where, it could be dangerous or it could be dangerous for somebody in our family. But being able to get vaccinated provides a safer way for that protection, right? Having the virus, having COVID-19 does give us some natural protection, but for the most part, we're thinking that protection lasts about 3 months at this point. And we don't know, for most people, it's, a little bit less, and some people it's a little bit more, but it's kind of fishy about how long that natural protection lasts. However, with that natural protection, you have the risk of severe illness, you have the risk of death, or you have the risk of, even if you don't get severely ill, you might pass it to somebody else who does get severely ill. So by having that vaccination, you're building that immunity without those nasty side effects, right? Without the risk of severe illness, without having to take a week or two off of work, the 10-day isolation, without having to do all that. So that way we have that herd immunity, but we have that herd immunity safely. And we'll talk more about herd immunity in a little bit. Oh, actually, now. So when we have this, you see this picture and it kind of looks like honeycomb, right? So when we talk about herd immunity, it's kind of thrown around a lot. But when we're talking about it in the case of vaccination, we're talking about how many people are immune to the disease. In this case, we're talking about COVID-19. And with that, the more people who are immune to the disease, the fewer people it spreads to, the fewer people have to worry, and the more and more that we can get to something called that, new normal, whatever that's going to look like. So we have here just kind of a glimpse of what it looks like based on the amount of people who are vaccinated, right? So if you have about 5% of people who are vaccinated, you have, if somebody gets sick, that person can spread it to someone else, who spreads it to somebody else, who spreads it to somebody else. And all of a sudden, everybody's sick, right? We saw that, mainly in the summer and, over Christmas break, we saw those peaks, right? Where everybody was getting sick. However, the more people get vaccinated, the fewer people that we come in contact to, get sick. So let's say that if there are 30% of people vaccinated and I'm the one who's sick, and I go and I see MaryBeth, but she's vaccinated, I can't make her sick. So that's really, really nice, right? So that means that all the people that she comes in contact with at work, they can't, make it, they don't make anybody else sick. Whereas, if we have 75% of people who are vaccinated, that pocket of infection gets even smaller, right? The people that we see, we touch, we don't even have to worry about making them sick. We just have to worry about, ourselves. So right now, when we talk about herd immunity, we want to get to a large portion of individuals who are vaccinated. So that way we have a lesser amount of people who get infected, people who have severe illness, and people who can't go to work, right? Can't go and do the things that we love to do, hang out with family, whatever. So right now in the United States, on that road to full vaccination, we have about 40% of people who have had at least one dose of a 2-dose vaccine. We have 33% of people in Georgia who have had one dose of a 2-dose vaccine. And in Rockdale County, unfortunately, right now, we only have 22% of individuals who have had one dose of a 2-dose vaccine. And when we're talking about being fully vaccinated, and that means 2 weeks after your second dose, if it's a 2-dose vaccine, or 2 doses after a 1-dose vaccine like Johnson & Johnson, we will have, 26% of individuals in the United States who are fully vaccinated, 21% of Georgians, and then only 16% of people in Rockdale County. And while, it's very, very important, that people get vaccinated for themselves, which is already amazing, you also want to look at that herd immunity side of things, right? Because we are such a close-knit community here in Rockdale County. So if only 16% of people are vaccinated, that means that we are that much further from being able to have any sort of herd immunity, from being able to have any sort of awesome, fun football games again at Heritage, or, being able to, have congregate safely at things, like the Taste of Conyers or things like that. We are that much further from it. So we have to make those baby steps and get closer to that fully vaccinated status and get closer to that 75% of individuals who are vaccinated.
And I can, if you want, I can show the animation of how like this starts for sure.
Please
and
do,
I think,
yes.
Yeah. And I think what's important, and I think you're doing an amazing job at explaining it, but yeah, I think there's a lot of like people who are just kind of in their heads. They're like, well, the vaccines are here, so that means I can kind of do whatever I want. And you can see we're not even to that 30% yet. And I think this animation you're going to see starts with like 2 or 3 cases, which became 200 out of 400 people. And so people are just kind of living in an atmosphere where they're thinking we're closer than we actually are right now.
Right.
But let me do that new share. Okay, do this. Can you see that, Adriana?
Yes, we can. So we see that spread, right? So run that one more time. Yep. So we saw one case. It's going to be, those couple index cases, right? So those first cases, they're going to be surrounded in that gray dot. And just by, them seeing one more person and that person seeing one more person, we have a huge spread in something that's 5% vaccinated. And we still have that huge spread, that red creeping and crawling all over the place for that 30% vaccinated, right? So when we run that number, but we do start to see those barriers, right? When we see those people who are vaccinated, they stop that spread in certain places. So we want to get there and we want to keep going there. So people who are unfortunately unable to get vaccinated due to, we're going to talk about some reasons why you can't get vaccinated. But we want to make sure that if people who are unable to get vaccinated, that we protect them, because they tend to be the people who need the protection the most. And you probably know some people like that already in your lives. So with that, vaccines can be a little bit complicated. So we're going to talk about mRNA vaccines, right? So they're going to be from messenger RNA. We're going to talk about Pfizer and Moderna. And that mRNA, right? mRNA is just like your DNA, except for it's instead of 2 strands, it's 1 strand, right? And so that 1 strand can never touch our 2-strand DNA. It's going to go into the body and it's going to code for a small amount of proteins that are on the outside of the virus. So it's not coding for a full virus. So it can't give you the virus. It can't make you, it can give you side effects, but it can't make you sick with COVID-19. But you're going to see those proteins on the outside of that virus. And, you might have heard them on the news called spike proteins. But you're going to see them and your body is going to have them inside. And then because it's inside your body, we learn to recognize them. And so that way it's prepared to fight in case it ever sees it. So that way, if, we'll go back to me, if MaryBeth has been vaccinated and she comes in contact with me and I breathe all over her, we're going to see that her body is going to already know what I'm breathing, what that virus looks like, so she doesn't get sick because her body has that immune response that's going to kick right in. And she has found a cute video that explains this. So we're going to cue that up right now. But if anybody has any questions, if you feel like I'm moving too fast, please let me know. Can you make that bigger?
You need to make this.
Apparently it doesn't get bigger. Maybe zoom in.
You need to make this. What is it? It's a part of a virus.
Yes.
A virus? Just a part of it, not the actual virus. They're called COVID-19. They have 4 cans and they're coming. 4 cans? Please. What is this? This messenger told me to make them. I've never seen these before. I'll make some new antibodies to get rid of them. Seize the forks. Nice body. Gonna make this place my new home. 4 cans. Seize them.
Yeah. So as you can see by this delightful, terrible action movie, if we think about it like, anything, if we think about it like the Fast and the Furious or, anything like that, that's kind of what our body is doing, right? So what we have here are just those instructions, right? So that's what that mRNA does. And it doesn't incorporate with your body. Your body automatically disintegrates it. It doesn't have a long shelf life anyway, but it automatically disintegrates. So it can't sneak its way anywhere else.
Yeah, that's what you saw as the screaming. It was dissolving, so it didn't exist anymore in the body.
Yes, I love it. Then your body, it's like, okay, well, here are these instructions. So I'm going to learn based on these instructions what to do. I'm going to practice and then I'm going to, knock it out. That's why sometimes you feel some kind of side effects after a vaccine, because that's your immune response slowly starting to kick in. But luckily, it's not making you sick, because when you have the ability when you come in contact with the virus, you're like, oh, okay, so I've seen this part of that virus right there. So what do I do with it? Yes, like any wonderful action movie, we get rid of it, we dissolve it, we grab a hold of it and we get rid of it. So thank goodness for our vaccines. They'll keep us safe. So that's why, it takes time. So think about like the Karate Kid, right? We've got a Mr. Miyagi, we've got a wax on, we've got a wax off. Our body has to take some time, right? It has, it takes 2 doses of these messenger RNA vaccines, so of the Pfizer and the Moderna vaccine. It takes 2 doses to make sure that our bodies get enough practice, and it takes 2 weeks for our bodies after that second dose to really be the most effective, right? We want to give it time to learn and understand. And with that, we end up creating these little things called antibodies. Those are the things that found those forcans and we're like, nah, no way. We know what these are and we're coming for you. And so right now, research has shown that it has lasted for all 6 months of these clinical trials. It could be longer as we, continue to look at more research. So we're hoping, we're praying that this is going to be something that lasts for a long, long time. However, that 6 months is already longer than the 3-month immunity that we see that comes with naturally getting the infection. And it comes without those side effects, right? Without feeling, sick, without having to take those 10 days off of work, without having the possibility of long-term illness or anything like that. So it's always, a pretty good swap out. And so we saw it can't make you sick with a COVID-19, right? We don't have the virus, right? We just have those spike proteins on the outside. So what makes us sick is on the inside of that virus. So with just having those spike proteins, we do see an immune response. You might, when you get those vaccines, you might have a low-grade fever or some chills or some body aches. That's your body learning instead of having that virus that's going to give you that whole thing, right? The cough, the, shortness of breath, anything like that. So it takes a little while. We talked about taking some time and, getting vaccinated and what that means. But our body is, it does, it's going to go slowly. But one thing that I do want to make sure that I mention is that after you have your first vaccine, sometimes you're still going to come in contact with COVID, right? So after you have your first vaccine, before you have your second, you're still going to come in contact with it. So MaryBeth and I were working on a project. She just got her first vaccine. I'm coming over here with the COVID and I'm like, everywhere. So her body, just with that first vaccine, it's going to be like, SpaghettiOs. We kind of know what this thing is, but we're not totally sure. So she might have some more mild symptoms, right? But she could still get COVID and she could still become positive because I exposed her. But luckily, with just that one vaccine, she's already having some immune response. So it's not going to be as much of a problem.
And I think we've seen in the news, like some people misunderstanding that if they came in contact with the virus in between that time, they just assume the vaccine did it to me, which is not true.
Right. It could have been anything, it could have been me going to the grocery store a couple days before the vaccine or me spending some time with somebody, a couple days after my vaccine. So, we see some things like that. So we want to make sure that if we are offered, the vaccine, and right now it is offered to anybody over the age of 16 here in Georgia. We want to choose to be, excuse me, I'm very pollinated. I went for a walk outside yesterday and it's an immediate thing for me. But we want to make sure that we are protecting, ourselves and, our families by getting vaccinated. So you want to share that experience, you want to know the basics, and then, we want to have some stickers and talk about it. So once we kind of know a little bit more, we're going to talk about it more. But just reminding you, you got this. So what do we feel like when we have vaccines? What is, especially right now, it's kind of scary. It's only been a few months. What does this process look like? We feel like they're rushed. And this is not, an indictment on anybody. It's definitely a feeling that we all have, a feeling that, well, wow, okay, maybe not. But we're going to talk about that so that way we can kind of feel a little bit easier, a little bit more comfortable with the process. So MaryBeth's got a wonderful video queued up and we will watch that.
Developing a vaccine is a long road full of checkpoints. Different phases of testing are designed to make sure it is both effective and safe. But with the whole world struggling to contain a pandemic and unprecedented amounts of scientific work taking place, the road to finding the COVID-19 vaccine looks more like this. But first, let's take a look at the usual path. During preclinical trials, the vaccine is tested on animals to determine whether they develop antibodies to the disease-causing germ. If these trials are successful, the candidate vaccine moves on to phase 1 trials in humans, during which the vaccine is given to a small number of healthy adults to assess its safety in humans. The results of every phase are reviewed by independent clinical experts who assess the research team's findings. Sometimes they'll pause the trials to check the results, always making sure the candidate vaccine is safe. The next phase involves testing a larger group of people to find out the appropriate dose, whether it stimulates an immune response, and of course, to assess its safety. Once the results have been checked by the independent expert observers, the candidate vaccine is evaluated among thousands more volunteers. This phase determines whether it is effective against disease. If the answer is yes, the vaccine is independently assessed by regulators for effectiveness, safety, and manufacturing quality. It is also assessed by independent policymakers who determine the best way to use the vaccine. If the assessment meets the regulatory standards, the product can be authorized for use, and the vaccine is then ready for licensing and registration. Once that happens, the approved vaccine can be used in the population. But because of the urgent need for a COVID-19 vaccine, some of the phases can run in parallel, and the research team can submit a request for temporary authorization from national regulatory authorities and an emergency use listing from WHO. This authorization and WHO emergency listing are only given if the vaccine meets strict safety and effectiveness criteria. But the road doesn't stop there. Once the vaccine is in use, it continues to be monitored by health authorities for safety and for effectiveness to ensure the vaccine maintains the highest standards. The race is on to find vaccines for COVID-19, which is why some phases are happening at the same time. But no one is cutting corners. Everyone is subject to the same checks and independent monitoring. So although we'll get the COVID-19 vaccines faster, they'll be as safe as other approved vaccines.
Awesome. So that is super duper important, right? Because the same things that we do for a normal vaccine are done right now through this emergency use authorization. Well, all that means is that some of that red tape has been taken off and multiple researchers can work on the same thing at the same time, versus usually it's only one place that's doing one thing.
And also, Adriana, isn't it like it's usually hard to find thousands of people who would need immunization from a certain disease or are willing to take part in the trial? And this is such a big problem that it's so much easier to find people.
That is very true. Yeah. So sometimes, it can be a much longer process to find people to volunteer for clinical trials. But, this year, it has been something that has been, out on the news. People have been coming in droves to do things. And we're really, really thankful for that, for people to come and, try and get tested to be tested. And all it really, includes is, some people get a placebo and then some people get the real vaccine. And then from those clinical trials, they just, watch people, make sure that things are safe and manage and monitor side effects. They also do that for any vaccine or any medication that has been, put out. The FDA, after something's been authorized, monitors closely the safety and those side effects. And you guys have seen this in process with the Johnson & Johnson vaccine that's happening right now, right? It's been less than 1% of people who have had those blood clots, 6 people. And unfortunately, one has died and one was in critical condition. However, because that happened during this time, right, we were able to notice immediately and stop it before it continued to move forward, before anything else, happened. So that way we can learn more about those people, see if they have anything in common, and then see if that vaccine is going to be contraindicated or, not used for somebody who has a certain type of something, right? So a certain type of disease, a certain type of medication that they're already taking, some certain, thing that might be, a genetic condition that they might have. So that way we can look and learn, and see who this might not work for in the future. So thankfully, they are continuing to look at that, continuing to assess that safety. And before that comes back out to be able to be used on the market here in the United States, here in Georgia, it will be thoroughly looked at and researched. Yeah. So sometimes we can worry about long-term safety. And so MaryBeth's going to talk about, some of these worries and try to help assuage us of anything. Before we get to that, does anybody feel like they have any questions or comments or concerns? Please feel free to type them out in the chat. We'll get there.
Yeah. So we can pause whenever, but one thing that is important to note about the Johnson & Johnson is that all of these reactions that they've seen were within that 2-week period of the dosage. And so that information is kind of at the height of when something is likely to happen. Huge. And then similarly, the active ingredient kind of being that messenger RNA, we've talked about how that gets dissolved. So there's not a lot of kind of paths where we would see long-term safety being a concern, but there are some things we see over and over that people want to talk about, and that's fine. We are here to talk about, and hopefully you can become someone who can talk about some of these things. So the one thing that we see is like, oh, this is a new technology with the messenger RNA, which is so similar to DNA. Is it going to get into my DNA? Is it going to alter my DNA and kind of alter my whole body? And we kind of discussed how that's not how it is. A single chain can't interact with the double chain that way. And the messenger RNA doesn't ever get to the nucleus of the cells where DNA is made. And so that's just kind of not the path that it takes in the body, but it's scary. Most of us didn't go to school or spend hours and hours learning about the differences between these things. We're like, they just sound similar. And this is new and scary. And so it's a hard time to be alive, but the COVID-19 vaccines do not change or even interact with your DNA in any way. So there's not an opportunity for it to change. And then another concern that we see is about people who are pregnant or hope to be pregnant, or if there's any kind of fertility issues. And we know that people who are pregnant, we see that they have a higher risk for severe disease, and it can impact their baby and things like that. So whether someone is currently pregnant or is hoping to get pregnant, the recommendation from all major medical organizations is to get the vaccine, because it shouldn't interfere with that process and would protect you and the baby. We've actually seen babies having antibodies, and also breastfeeding mothers being able to pass those antibodies on to the baby. And so that's really exciting. It's totally understandable where the fear comes from. We do need to be cognizant of the risks, especially at that important time in the mother and the baby's life. But we have nothing to be worried about, whether it's fertility or affecting of the new life. There is some concern. I know some people can't get certain vaccines. Adriana was telling me that if people were allergic to citrus, they actually are not recommended to get the Johnson & Johnson vaccine specifically. And so if you are someone, or you know someone who has allergies to medications or foods or other common ingredients in vaccines, then the number one thing is to talk with your care provider. And if you have a PCP or doctor that you have a relationship with, that is part of what they want to do, whether you have these complications or not, is helping you get to a place of comfort or decide which one is right or something like that. And so they would be able to steer you in the right direction if there's any concerns about your specific health, because there are people who aren't able to get the vaccine for various reasons of their immune system being suppressed for other reasons or medications they're on. And back to that herd immunity conversation, there's always going to be people who can't get the vaccine. So we hope to get enough people who can vaccinated so they get the same protection from all of us as if they were able to have that protection themselves. And so one thing that you will see is if you've ever had a severe allergic reaction or anaphylaxis or anything like that, when you go for your vaccine, they have everyone wait for 15 minutes to see if anything happens. And if you have allergies, they're going to ask you to stay for 30 minutes just as an additional layer of protection, and they can get you emergency medical help if something was to happen, which is not expected, but it's an abundance of caution. Do you have anything to add, Adriana?
I just add that I am a card-carrying member of the EpiPen community. I have, allergies to nuts and to shellfish, and it was concerning. I remember at the beginning, where they were talking about people having allergic reactions. And so it's always important to just check in with your doctor. They will tell you on, if you want to do some research yourself, a lot of things, if there are, specifics for, if you are allergic to shellfish or if you are allergic to nuts, can you get this vaccine? I know for a lot of people who are allergic to eggs, they can't get the flu shot. Some people are concerned that that's going to be the same here. They don't use eggs in this vaccine, actually. However, it's still something that you want to make sure to check out. So as somebody with allergies who's always concerned about just like accidentally falling apart and not being able to breathe, that's totally fine. You just let people know, call your doctor beforehand, say, hey, is this cool? And they'll walk you through, the process. And then, that extra 30 minutes is just some time that you get to read a book or like watch YouTube uninterrupted. So I liked it.
Yeah. And then there's also there's conversations out there, or there were, that were like, well, there's all these options, like which one should I get? Which one's the best one? And the best one is whichever one is available to you and is safe according to your doctor for you if you have any of those individual concerns. And so when those efficacy numbers were coming out, that people were like, well, the Johnson & Johnson is lower than this one, so I don't want to get that one. And that's just like not really how the technology works. That's not how herd immunity works. And so we want you to jump on whichever one you are able to get, whether it's Moderna or Pfizer. They are both incredibly effective. I hear a lot of people being like, this is truly a modern scientific miracle in a sense. And like, there are people who are alive when the polio vaccine came out, and there were like celebrations in the street. And it is very similar in the level of like how it can save our way of life. And so a lot of people did not think we'd be here this fast, and we are, and it's safe and it's changing things for people. And it's exciting, but we understand the fear on the other side. But yeah. So if you are ready to get vaccinated, we wanted to talk about what to expect and where you can find different things. And so one place you can start is checking with your primary care provider to see if they're offering the vaccine. I know I've been a patient in the Piedmont system and the Emory system, and I've gotten emails from both of them that is like, go through this portal if you're a current patient, and we might be able to get you a vaccine through these offices you're already going to. You can also call your local pharmacy or check their website. And there are two different websites we wanted to show you about where you can find vaccine appointments. And so one is through the Georgia Department of Public Health, and one is kind of a national conglomerate called vaccinefinder.org. And so it's pulling in Walmart and CVS and Publix and links directly to their websites. And when I was on vaccinefinder.org today, they had appointments, several today at Walmart in Conyers. And so I can show you the screenshots of these if you want. So let's see if I can get them. Where'd it go? Okay. No, not this again. So here is the Georgia Department of Public Health one, and you proceed to the questionnaire and you answer a few questions, and then it lets you select how far you're willing to drive, 25 miles, 50 miles, etc. So you might go to I went to the Georgia International Convention Center, but we have at least 3 sites that are in Conyers: Reagan's Pharmacy, Springfield Baptist, and what's the other? Oh, the Women's Center, which is down 212. So that's one website, and this is where I found my appointment. And then vaccinefinder.org, you click on find COVID vaccines, and you want to uncheck this one because they're on that pause. But the Moderna or Pfizer, you can put in 30094, 25-mile radius. And it has all these things that pop up, and then you go to their website to start trying to see what's available. And sometimes they schedule a week out. Do they ever schedule more than a week out? Do you know, Adriana?
Likely no. Likely it's usually about a week to 10 days out is, unless you're getting your second vaccine and you schedule it at the place, they likely will not schedule more than a week out just because of, pipeline and availability and who knows what's going on there.
Yeah, that makes sense. And most places, when you get your first dose, won't let you leave until you schedule that second dose appointment. A lot of, depending on where you go.
Yes.
So who can and cannot get the vaccine? We talked about it a little bit, but all Georgians 16 and up are currently eligible. Younger children are not able to be vaccinated. There is some research that maybe soon 12 to 15-year-olds will be added, at least for the Pfizer vaccine. So we're just going to see how that all goes. It will likely be the beginning of next year, at least, before the youngest people are recommended to get it and it's available. If you're pregnant, have an autoimmune disease, a compromised immunity due to medication or allergies, those are those situations where you probably do want to talk to your doctor, and that can help assuage fears as well. And then if you've ever had those allergic reactions, like we mentioned. So a little bit about what to expect before, during, and after. We might be in the before phase for you, where you're learning about the different vaccines. At your site, they will probably give you a fact sheet that tells you about either the Pfizer or Moderna dose that you're receiving, and you will get that all-important vaccination card that you see everywhere, that people share on social media and all those kinds of things. You don't necessarily want to show all the information on there just for safety. But then after, you want to prepare for some side effects. And I know that some employers are giving kind of paid time off for that day after, because a lot of people try to go to work and they feel fine when they wake up, and then as the next day goes on, they see some of those side effects with the fever, and may or may not have happened to Adriana and her coworkers. There is an app called vSafe that you can report anything that's happening to you, and it will remind you if you need a second shot and you haven't received it. And then we're going to talk about what's recommended in terms of behavior and social distancing and things after as well. So this is really short. I don't think there's any sound to it, but it's about what to expect at your appointment.
So you'll want to stay 6 feet away from others while you're inside and in those lines. You and your vaccination provider will need to wear those masks and cover your nose and your mouth on those masks. And then you'll get your vaccination record card, and then a paper or electronic COVID vaccination sheet. So kind of like those things that are inside of your prescriptions when you get them. And those tools will give you important information about your vaccine as well as when you receive them. And you'll also get information about registering for vSafe, which is vsafe.cdc.gov. And so you'll do health check-ins with vSafe, just to tell them, you know, it'll just kind of have little happy faces. So it's like, oh, I'm feeling great. Oh, I'm feeling kind of meh. Oh, I had a bad day. What kind of side effects were you having? Are you having injection site pain? What's going on? So that way they can learn more about people and about what's happening.
Yes. So there are common side effects. Some people, their immune system really kicks in and they have some side effects with the first dose. In many cases, they're mostly fine for the first dose, and then the second dose is a little bit heavier handed. And so with a lot of vaccines, you'll see a little bit of like injection site pain. The arm is sore. If you get a flu shot, usually your arm is sore for a few days. You might see a little bit of swelling just in that area. And you might just be generally fatigued, not feel totally yourself. You might have a headache, some muscle pain. Some people have joint pain, chills, fever, and nausea. And what I hear people say over and over again is like, this is what the vaccine is? Like, I do not want to touch COVID-19 with the 10-foot pole. Like, this is worth it, but that's so much worse. Yeah.
Yes, I can say, and I'm so jealous, MaryBeth had nothing. She was wonderful. She was a model citizen, and I felt miserable. However, I will say that the day after I felt miserable, I felt like I could run a marathon. I was just like, this is beautiful. I feel great. I got a lot of sleep. I think I slept that whole day after. So, you know, if you do have, you know, a job or, you know, where there isn't able to be paid time off, you know, you want to go for that Saturday or the day before, you might have a day off. But, you know, just to be able to, you know, remember to, you know, just to prepare a little bit, but likely you'll be just fine. You know, my dad was just fine. But geez Louise, it happens to so many people and you never know which one you're going to get, but it's so much better than getting COVID-19 itself, right? We don't want to roll the dice with that, you know, trouble breathing or those long-term headaches that happen to people for months. We don't need that. We just want to have it done in a day.
Yeah, it is so interesting how it really is just like there and then it's not. And so some things you can do if you're experiencing some discomfort and side effects, or even help, never mind. Just if you're experiencing them, you can do like cold or clean, cool, wet washcloths over the area and kind of move your arm around and use it for different things. Definitely drink plenty of fluids and don't wear lots of layers if you're feeling feverish. You can likely take over-the-counter medications like ibuprofen and acetaminophen or Tylenol and things for any fever or pain or discomfort that you're experiencing, but we definitely don't want you to take them. Don't take the ibuprofen before your vaccine appointment, because it could actually make the vaccine not work 100% the way it's supposed to, or just, I'm not sure if I said the right thing there.
Yeah, it does. It'll still be effective. However, the issue is, any kind of concern, with with anything, with taking too much of something, is really the main concern. And it can also, your body also might be, doing a couple of too many things at once. So we do want to have that, or let initial, entrance without, the dulling. But, once you take it, once you start to feel kind of achy, go for it. As long as, you usually take it. And if you don't usually take it, talk to your doctor.
Yeah. And then if it's been several days and you're feeling very crummy, then you can absolutely talk to your doctor. I'm sure they are totally fine with you calling them even in that first day. If all they're going to say is like, oh, that's typical. If you still feel this way tomorrow or the next day, let me know, drink some fluids, get some sleep, that kind of thing. So just don't plan hugely important tasks and meetings on the day after, in case you are laid out for that day.
Enjoy the rest. We all need it this year.
That's true. There's also concerns about being forced to take the vaccine if you don't want it. And the CDC does not have the ability to mandate that you get the COVID-19 vaccine. And we actually have a handout to share that I don't believe about employers, and how you also can't necessarily mandate that your employees get it or anything like that. So there's a help sheet about that. And so after vaccination, like we talked about, it all goes back to the herd immunity. There's lots of things you can do that you're more free to do as an individual. But when it comes to the wider population, you can't tell who's been vaccinated or not. We're not anywhere close to that 75%. And so when you're in a public setting, we still have to do those things that we've gotten so good at over the past year, of keeping that mask over both your nose and mouth, staying apart from people you don't live with, avoiding crowds and poorly ventilated spaces. Thankfully, we can do so much more outside as the weather gets better. Keep washing your hands and working on those surfaces and things like that. But I'm going to do this first and then go back to that video. So if you are fully vaccinated and many of your friends are fully vaccinated, you can have a dinner party inside and not have to wear any masks or anything like that. If you and you have adult children, or your parents are older, if you're all vaccinated, you can hug and all that kind of stuff. No prevention measures are needed. And so I really like this picture because it has that house outline, and it's all about households. It's not about necessarily number of people, but it's the people who are around each other regularly. So the general rule is that if you have two households together and one household is vaccinated and the other is not, that protection should be enough from the vaccinated person that you can interact without a mask and that kind of thing. But if you have multiple households that are not vaccinated, like you see at the bottom, then you have to act like no one's vaccinated. You have to keep doing the safety measures that you've been doing before. And then if you have it's a one household situation, but someone in that unvaccinated group is higher risk, especially if it's like a higher risk child or an adult who can't get the vaccine, then you still want to take those prevention measures. But if it's a family that everyone has no reason to believe that they have a complicated issue, if they were to contract COVID, we still don't know. Like a lot of people have been like at the peak of health and still had very serious complications from COVID. But if you don't have reason to believe that should or would happen, then you don't have to mask up and things like that.
Real fast before you move on.
Yeah.
I want to remind you guys that fully vaccinated is if you have a 2-dose vaccine, it's 2 weeks after that 2-dose vaccine. I'm looking at you guys. I'm looking at everybody.
Yeah, a lot of
because it feels like
hot and I'm good.
Yes, only because it feels like that should be the case, right? It feels like that. Oh, yes, I want that instant gratification. And even my mother, who is a nurse by trade, who understands the concept of fully vaccinated, she was like, well, we can do a lot of things now. And I was like, ma'am, you got your second vaccine yesterday. And so I did. I was like, no, Mom, we can't. But, making sure that we're really being that fully vaccinated. And then to remember that if you are a family that has kids, so who are too young to be vaccinated, or, you're a family with somebody, that still follows in that yellow household, right? So you still want to keep it low, low risk, only hang out with people who are, vaccinated, and making sure, that you're keeping it safe. But that still means that, hey, if grandma wants to come over and grandma's vaccinated, she can go hang out with this one household at a time. It might mean that, grandma has to go to one grandchild's house and then go to grandchild number 2's house, but that's just more love for grandma. So we still want to keep everybody safe. So we want to make sure that we are doing that and taking those necessary precautions. And then if you are, for whatever reason, uncomfortable, you can still wear your mask, right? That's not what we're saying here. If you feel like, I'm vaccinated, but I don't know how I feel about this, or maybe I'm going somewhere and I don't know what, they're still doing. If you ever feel uncomfortable, you can keep it on. Don't sweat it. Don't let anybody peer pressure you.
Yeah. And it's hard because that basically means that you could have an adult dinner party, but like somehow a child's 5-year-old birthday party is way more risky because of all these different households that are in that yellow state.
Yes.
And so this kind of goes with all the things that you can do when you're fully vaccinated, but following this first red X is going with those household pictures that we shared. And then medium and large gatherings that's just so many people. And we saw that it's just, the vaccine is not as prevalent in the population yet as people act like it is. And so we have a short video that talks a little bit about kids and different things. It's getting these same principles, but sometimes it's helpful to see it a different way.
Basically what they're saying is people who are fully vaccinated, so 2 weeks after the second dose of the 2-dose schedules, or 2 weeks after the first dose of the 1-dose schedule, that people are protected and they can be together with other vaccinated adults. So everybody that are gathering together should be vaccinated, and then they can be inside, they can have dinner, they can be without their masks, they don't need to social distance. They feel that the vaccine is so safe that the chances of transmission between fully vaccinated adults and then having symptomatic disease is extraordinarily rare. Another thing that's really important is they say that vaccinated adults, fully vaccinated adults, can also see younger people, as long as the younger people who aren't vaccinated, as long as they're not at high risk for severe disease. So they're young, they're healthy, they don't have comorbidities, they don't have underlying diseases that make them at risk for more severe disease. So they can get together with another household, for example, their children and grandchildren from another household, and they can hug their grandkids. They feel that there is a slight risk that the vaccinated person could transmit to those who are unvaccinated and that they could get infected, but there's very little risk of the vaccinated adult of them having transmission to them and them getting sick. One thing that they're not recommending is, for example, let's say a grandparent has 2 children with 2 separate households with kids. They're not recommending that all of them get together at once because, of course, those 2 households, if they get together and they're not masking, then there's risk of transmission between them. So they're recommending that the vaccinated individuals just to get together with one household at a time. And of course, when you're getting together with other adults, they are recommending in small gatherings, so like 5 or 10 people, not large gatherings where the exposure might be more. And again, we want to try this. We think it's going to work. We think it's going to be safe, but we want to try it for a while, and then we'll gradually open up more and more.
I think that's sufficient. So it's hard. We've had to be so patient, and we're just asking that we don't rush to the finish line before it's time. But enjoy those freedoms. Like, for example, I haven't seen my parents since December of 2019. And so I will be fully vaccinated Saturday, 2 weeks past my second dose, and they're coming Memorial Day, and I am so excited. I have a new house. My sister has a new house. They haven't been here. And so they live in Pennsylvania. And so that we have so much freedom to do that. And then I have some friends in Atlanta, like 5 or 6 of us usually get together. We've always been outside or with masks, and like the freedom to be able to go to that person's house and hang out and not be concerned because we're all vaccinated. That's huge to me. Yes, I still want to go to a concert, but like those small things that I can now do safely are really filling my tank and making me excited again. And so just like I just did, we would love for you, if you are vaccinated, to be willing to share your story with loved ones, be honest about any side effects, or even honest about your concerns and how you got to the other side. And so I know it's a little blurry, but I'll read for you. There are some tips that if you have a lot of loved ones who are a little bit, are still very hesitant, some things that they recommend are to kind of tailor your audience to someone's political party or age or geography the best you can. Focus on those benefits, like I said, of what I now can do, and not only the consequences of not doing it. Talk about the humans, the experts who really got us to this point, who are behind the vaccine. So the scientists, the medical experts, the researchers, and not just the drug companies or pharmaceutical companies. Talk about all those people who probably hardly got to even rest because they were working so hard to get this vaccine to where it is now. We do recommend that you avoid all judgmental language when talking about people who are concerned, because the concerns are real and maybe you even have them or had them. And so very few people are ever convinced to do anything different by someone being belligerent to them. And so just do your best. If someone's being belligerent to you, just share what you can and decide if you think you can interact in that situation or not, if there's anything you can even say, but you can stand on your own experience and be non-judgmental in your tone and language. And then use and repeat the word every to explain the vaccine development process. For example, every study, every phase, and every trial was reviewed by the FDA and a safety board. And if you want, we can send the links out to all the video with all the checkpoints and things, if that would be helpful to anyone that you know. So we're going to send out these links to you. There's different places to get information that we used for this, different COVID-19 pages on the CDC website, the World Health Organization, and then we have some data trackers for the state of vaccines for the state of Georgia as well as the nation. But we wanted to share, we do recommend following research-based people and entities on social media because they spend so much time. We took a lot of those graphics from social media, but like making it digestible, but then also linking to more information to read more. Because otherwise, if they don't link back to information, you don't know who made that, you don't know where it came from. And so we're not saying that these are the only people you can trust, but if someone just made an engaging graphic that's fear mongering, that's very different. And they don't necessarily have research and facts to back it up. So we recommend the CDC, Adriana's employer, the Gwinnett-Newton-Rockdale County Health Departments, the World Health Organization. Piedmont-Rockdale has been posting a lot of things, and they have some really cool testimonials from people as well as physicians, asking specific FAQs and then answering them in a very conversational way. And then Adriana's favorite person, Dr. Kazmikia Corbett, who is the lead research immunologist for Moderna. She is like her superhero at this point. She posts a lot as well. So we recommend all of that. So that's what we had for you. Next month is going to be about mental health and mindfulness and things like that. We can put the survey link. We always hope that people can help us see how we did with this one and what you're hoping to learn in the future. I do owe a prize to Terillis and Stephanie. So I will get in contact with you about how to get that to you. But otherwise, we are still promoting Living Well Rockdale. I'll put this all in the email that we send, but we'd love to take any questions. Go ahead, Adriana.
Oh, go back real fast so I can put the rest of the thing in the chat.
Oh, which?
Ooh, that one more.
This? Oh,
that
this.
one.
Okay. You're so welcome. I'm glad that you came, Jean. It's wonderful to see you and virtually and all that kind of stuff. And we did record it. So I feel like I was scared, but I think it went well enough that we can post this whole talk for anyone to watch and see from our social media, and we'll email out the link to you as well.
Definitely. And, if you ever have anyone, who, feels uncomfortable or feels scared or, anything like that, we are always around. With Gwinnett County, with Gwinnett-Newton-Rockdale County, you guys can always, find someone and call, there are helplines, but you always are totally welcome. I do COVID night and day now. So, you're always welcome to call me, if you've got, questions or concerns, or, family members who have questions and concerns and, want to talk about getting more information out there and understanding, please share this with your, employers. Please share this with your employees. If your employees have, expressed hesitancy to you, whoever you're feeling, is, uncomfortable or frightened, we are all out here, to talk to you guys about this because we're all in this together. It's nothing to be ashamed of, to be scared. We're all here together. So I'm really grateful for you all and thankful that we got to share this information with you. And I'm excited to see you guys, when we're all vaccinated. But, if I see you guys in, Publix right now, you'll still see us with our mask, doing proper things, making sure we're getting that hand sanitizer before and after. You'll still see us following those rules. And we'll see you guys following those rules too. But, we're going to make sure, that we get to see each other. And, we look forward to you guys sharing your stories when you get there.
Yeah, thank you for taking the time to learn more for yourself, whether you were concerned or not, and being able to pass that on. And just, we know the lunch hour is precious time. And so we are very grateful that you spent this time with us.